My name is Tommy Springfield.
And I'm better than you!
And on this channel, I present you with the facts. I give you my opinion on those facts. If you like how I do that, hit that like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, click all so you can get notifications every time I drop one of these videos. Maybe you're new here, maybe you've been here before.
Allow me to reintroduce myself.
I like to think of myself as a superhero, but the ghetto version, like Batman, but I'm Batman. I live in the that game, I drive a that mobile, and I promise you, I'm not naked. Today's story is a story out of my city, Springfield, Mass. Serial killer, he killed 3 girls, and the crazy part about it, I shared a cell with this dude. Prior to him doing all this, he was one of them dudes in jail that just walked around the pod. And if you've been in jail, you know those dudes. They just walk around in a circle. People used to tease him. People used to fuck with him, get those meds, and he sleep all day. That was the type of dude he was. He didn't seem to be a threat to anyone, but I guess he was crazy. Enough of me talking. By the way, we used to call him Jersey. So, enough of me talking. Let's get to the video, because it's long.
I did what I did. Nobody guilty but me, you know what I'm saying?
If she were here now, I would start by telling her that I'm sorry and that I love her. I would tell her I need my big sister back.
He chose a certain category of victims who he believed he could victimize without repercussions.
This is a person who was on a path at an early age and just progressed and became somebody who was a danger to everybody around him.
I can only imagine the fear that is felt at this time.
I would characterize it as evil. I would characterize it as subhuman. I think he's a monster.
Every day, I am haunted by memories and images. I will never be whole again.
Stewart Weldon was born in 1977. He grew up in Jamaica, Queens, New York, which was an area that was known for having a lot of drug activity. His father died when he was a teenager.
There was indications that he was sexually assaulted, that he was experimenting with drugs, and was introduced to pornography at an early age.
In 1990, just after his father's death, Stewart Weldon's mom moves them out of the city to Montclair, New Jersey, a safer neighborhood with a lower crime rate.
No mother wants to see their child involved in criminal activity. So what is often done is, let us move to a more suburban life and we can start all over. That was probably the intent of this caring mother trying to move her son to a different way of life.
But Stewart Weldon's difficult start to life continues when he reaches high school.
He seemed to have some pretty significant learning problems. He was diagnosed with severe ADHD. He apparently had dyslexia. I think when a child has some learning challenges, how that child does depends on a couple of different things, not just the severity of their disabilities, which is important to know, but also how the school handles those. So are they getting diagnosed early? Are they getting appropriate treatment? And it sounds like that he ended up having a pretty limited education. In 1996, Stewart Weldon is at a mall, and he and his buddy basically pick up 3 girls, are gonna go out and party. They end up taking 2 of them home. But the third one, they end up kidnapping and sexually assaulting.
At the age of 19, when he was in New Jersey, he was charged with sexual offenses as well as a weapons charge. He was picking up women.
So that's crazy. At 19, he picked up his first sexual charge. And you see, that's how it be in jail. You can be in a cell with a dude. You don't know what type of charges you got. I don't know what type of charge he was in there for when he was in Springfield, but this is his first charge in Jersey.
That it might have been drug involved, mental health issues involved in prostitution.
We often see a progressive nature of criminal offenses for those who commit very serious crimes.
The issues of violence often have their foundation in control. That if I'm able to violently get you to do what I want, I have control over you.
He's not starting out painting graffiti or even loitering in places where he's not supposed to be, or being on top of the school when he's not supposed to be on there, or things that we might think juveniles are exhibiting poor judgment and they're going to grow out of it. This kind of crime is not like that.
Another step up the ladder of engaging in criminal activity, engaging in violence.
Especially when you see sexually related or sexually involved offenses, typically that's a red flag. Sometimes those behaviors are innate and they repeat. Sometimes they get progressively worse.
It suggests premeditation. It suggests violent behavior. It is violent behavior. It suggests predatory behavior. And those are things that are oftentimes predictors of future violence and future sexual offenses. When we look at serial killers, we often do expect them to come from the most horrendous backgrounds and have parents who don't love them, don't care about them, abuse them, take advantage of them. And then you find parents who, for whatever reason, indulged their children, were permissive, and basically prevent that child from developing a sense of right and wrong that's internal.
That's crazy because I shared a cell with this dude. I went to sleep around this dude. I mean, there's nothing in his background that said he did something to other dudes, but I'm just saying, I never did, but people used to fuck with him, tease him. So he could have took that shit out on me when I was sleeping in my cell. You feel what I'm saying? But I mean, on a fair one, nah, he had no wins. But just thinking about you were sleeping in the cell with this dude on the bunk above you, and he out here killing people. But we was roomies prior to him killing the girls.
Stewart Weldon's criminality reaches a new level. Now 28 years old, he commits assault with a deadly weapon and receives a 3-year prison sentence. When he's released, he moves with his mother again, this time to Springfield in western Massachusetts. They live in a property made of 2 separate apartments.
Hey, man, I hate to do it to you, but if you live at that house right now, which is on Page Boulevard, put some bodies in your house.
It would hide some chilling secrets.
Springfield is the largest city in western Massachusetts and the largest city in Hampden County.
There's a lot of poverty here, a lot of crime, a lot of drugs. Essentially, it's an old industrial town that has been kind of overtaken by crime and drugs.
It's essentially like a distribution center of heroin between Boston and New York. This kind of underbelly of criminal activity is something that is appealing to him. He kind of gravitates to it, and I think he feels like he fits in and he understands it.
The narcotics detective once told me the only reason we don't have methamphetamine moving into the Springfield area is because heroin is so cheap here.
It's likely that his mom thought she was moving him to a better place.
Excuse me, think about that statement. The only reason we don't got methamphetamines and stuff like that is because heroin is so cheap. That's crazy. Heroin is so cheap, ain't no need to bring the other shit in here. Wow.
What she doesn't realize is she's basically moved him from the frying pan into the fire. There's a road in Springfield that is essentially known for sex workers to hang out, for people to be looking to make money in exchange for drugs, and for Stewart Weldon, who is very involved in criminal activity. This would be like a candy store. He could just drive down and pick and choose whatever he wants.
Weldon became very well known in circles involving women who were prostituting themselves. Became very well known in certain criminal circles, in particular an area of High and School Street in the city of Springfield. He became sort of embedded in a particular criminal aspect here in the city of Springfield.
When you have kind of a subculture of criminal behavior in a community, it is easier to get away with things because people kind of look out for each other in a way, and you don't stand out.
Stewart Weldon's respect for the law deteriorates further. He breaks into someone's home, and when apprehended, he violently attacks a police officer. He receives a 2-year prison sentence.
This is somebody that really strikes me as he doesn't care about anything. He doesn't care about himself that much.
I wonder, is that when we ran into each other? Because I was in 2003, I think. 2007, I think, and then right back in 2012. So somewhere around there is where we ran into each other.
He puts himself in all kinds of risk. He pulls a knife on a police officer. I mean, he could have been shot by police for legitimate reasons on many different occasions. So he's somebody who doesn't care about anybody or himself. And I think that is scary. That is something you don't often see.
Right, so he was released in 2012. I was released in 2012. That was my last bid I ever did. So maybe that's when I met him. Not sure.
Stewart Weldon was very involved in the drug world, and he was dealing drugs, which made it very, very easy for him to encourage and entice women.
See, that's one thing I don't agree with when they say he was dealing drugs. Like, nah, I mean, he was doing drugs and probably was the middleman. He knew this person, the sales come out, you know what I'm saying? But he was never known to be no hustler. But who am I? Because I didn't hang around him on the streets. I just knew him from jail, and then I would see him. But I would say he was a customer hustler, if you know what that means.
We're struggling with addiction into his car. Weldon used that as a way to lure them to his house.
A lot of the times he would get women into a car with an offer of, hey, I've got some drugs, let's go do them. And then as they got closer, maybe a negotiation took place about a sex act that ended up going too far. But in a lot of cases, women went to his apartment thinking they were going to hang out. And then when they got there, they would find out it was far more involved than just smoking drugs together. It was more about physical controls, slaps, punches, ordering them around, forcing acts on them that they did not agree to. He was kind of pushing the boundaries to see what he could get away with.
He subjected the victims of his crimes to experiences that could only be termed as near-death experiences.
Stewart Weldon, now aged 40, already has a criminal history spanning kidnap, burglary, sexual offenses, and assault with a deadly weapon. He's served 2 prison sentences. He's now luring vulnerable women to his basement, where he's torturing them, almost to the point of death. Despite this increasingly alarming behavior, he isn't drawing police attention.
These women are vulnerable on...
Not for nothing, you know. This is his mother's crib. Where is she at when he's beating these women? I mean, I don't want to give her no excuse, but is she scared of him at this time and hearing all this and just letting it go on? Is she not living there? Because once he went to jail, she's the one that called the police and said, I smell a smell. You didn't smell the smell before he went to jail? All of a sudden, after he went to jail, you smelled it? I don't know.
A lot of different levels, not only in terms of getting into a car with somebody they don't know, not only desperate perhaps in terms of looking for drugs to kind of feed an addiction, but also their relationship with the police is going to be very difficult. And so, you know, Stewart Weldon knows this. He knows that most often when a sex worker is raped or beaten up, either she's not going to go to the police because she's afraid she's going to be arrested for what she's been doing, or that she's not going to be believed. And all too often, that's exactly what happens.
These are women who sometimes fall out of touch with their families for periods of time and live very transient lifestyles. So sometimes not being around wouldn't be noticed. It was actually the women who hung out in Hines School Street who were the first ones to realize we haven't seen this person for a while. But even they said that's not uncommon. Sometimes people go to rehab, they get clean, or they try to move on, or simply find another area, move in with a man, things like that. So these are people whose disappearances might not go noticed right away.
It is almost a matter of you haven't punished me, so why should I stop committing the crimes, or maybe even escalating those crimes? I think we see the latter in this case. You haven't punished me severely. I am going to continue doing these crimes, and since the system is not stopping me or deterring me, these crimes will continue.
He does not have some of the normal restraints that most people have. And that makes people afraid of him. They're aware that he'll do whatever. He's intimidating, he'll fight cops, he'll run from cops, he'll fight anybody. I mean, this is somebody who truly seems to have no restraint when it comes to getting what he wants or doing what he wants to do.
A lot of these women described feeling like their life was draining away. They were losing vision and unable to speak. Having that complete and utter control over someone's life, that essentially having the power over whether or not they live or die, and being able to see their face react to the situation that they're in.
It's just astonishing to see the fact that he's doing all these things, not hiding them, not seeming to care about the consequences.
America Leiden is a 33-year-old mother who's just completed a drug rehabilitation program. 47-year-old Ernestine Ryans has lived her whole life in Springfield. She is a mother and soon-to-be grandmother. Kayla Escalante, a 26-year-old mom from neighboring Ludlow, struggles with drug addiction and has lost touch with her family.
So as you can see, from December to March to April, he unalived 3 females, yo. That's just crazy. And like, if drugs make you do that, man, stay away from them drugs. Cause like I said, man, I've seen this dude. Doesn't mean he was harmless. It just mean we all read him wrong, because he was, like I said, one of them walk in circles around the pods, take his meds, and sleep the rest of the day type of dude. It's just amazing. You know, may these girls' souls rest peacefully. My condolences goes out to the families, and I hope Stewart is having a horrible, horrible time in prison.
Police have no idea where these 3 vulnerable women are, or even if they're alive. It's not until 5 months after America Leiden is reported missing that authorities suspect Weldon is involved.
The first time I learned about Stewart Weldon, he was pulled over for a routine traffic stop, essentially, by some detectives. The car took off, and Mr. Weldon had just taken off in the middle.
And that was down by One Stop, which is the neighborhood I was grown up in and raised in. But what's interesting, I've noticed throughout this video, they kept it real slick and didn't say streets and didn't say neighborhoods where a lot of this stuff happened. They showed some of the stuff, but they mixed it up, so you really don't know.
The stop, which obviously the officers gave chase to him.
The traffic stop allows for the police officer with probable cause to do a search of the vehicle, to check out the welfare of the individuals inside the vehicle, and perhaps to ask questions if there is any speculation of criminal activity taking place.
This isn't somebody who's sophisticated and trying to hide his criminal activities. He's doing whatever he wants to do right then.
A chase occurs, and at the end of the chase, the police officers find that there is a woman tied, bound in the back seat of the car.
It's really the case of outstanding police work, police officers being observant, aware of their surroundings and people of interest in the area. It probably saved a life, and it probably saved more than one life.
The woman who was in the front passenger seat began screaming, and it became very obvious at that point she was significantly injured.
She immediately tells them she has been held captive for 1 month, that she has been unsafe, unwell, that she's been kidnapped and taken by Weldon.
The police officers see some odd and very serious injuries. She complains to them about pain. The victim then communicates with police officers about how Mr. Weldon had been abusing her and striking her with an object. And she had injuries on her body very consistent with this sort of abuse.
She was giving...
So hadn't he got pulled over in a hot neighborhood, because at that time our neighborhood was hot, on fire, and hadn't all that happened, she was next. She was going to be the 4th girl to be murdered. Just fate saved her life.
This information in a very hysterical way that was sometimes difficult to follow, a little rambling. She was in obvious trauma and distress, essentially saying that he'd been holding her against her will in his house for the past 30 days. He had been beating her, tying her up, things like that. She claimed that he had been beating her with a hammer in the leg, and the injuries to her leg were obvious. It was very clear that she'd been receiving abuse on that leg for quite some time, and she had to be rushed to the hospital, where she was actually almost in danger of losing that leg.
Wow, so he was beating her on the leg with a hammer. I guess that was his way of making sure she can't run or something. That's crazy.
Weldon is charged with kidnapping, threatening to commit a crime, carrying a dangerous weapon, and resisting arrest. Despite the claims of his victim, police don't have enough evidence to search his house.
Mr. Weldon was brought to court, and the next day, and I handled the arraignment on that case. He was charged with kidnapping and a variety of other assaultive charges. I believe at that time we requested a high cash bail, and he was held on $1 million cash bail for given the kidnapping and the serious allegations, which we later came to find out was only the tip of the iceberg. We didn't have probable cause, at least in my opinion, at that time, to go and search his home. That came a few days later on. Springfield police received a call from his adoptive mother, who was complaining about a smell in the basement. The way she described it to police officers on that call was she was worried about potentially there being a dead animal in the basement, and she was afraid to go and check it out.
I believe she knew it wasn't no dead animal because, listen, I don't know the story. Did she just show up up to the house because he was in jail? Or, it had to be a smell prior to that because he just went to jail. So I don't know if she called the next day, the next week, but come on, let's get a story together better than that.
A number of uniformed Springfield police officers entered the home and immediately were struck with a very strong and vile odor that they were familiar with as either decomposing human remains or animal remains.
For those of us who have been involved in investigation, there is a distinct smell you do not forget.
At this point, it was dark out. It was 8:30 or so. I recall getting onto the driveway of the home. I remember smelling an odor that I was somewhat familiar with at the time, even a great distance from the home, probably 50 feet at the end of the driveway. I went accompanied by police officers into the home and down the stairs. I remember at that point, the smell was very, very strong. And then I was taken into a bathroom area.
So you're going to tell me he can smell this at the edge of the driveway? And if the mother was living there, she ain't smell it? So I don't know if police did their investigation, because she has to be complicit. She didn't smell it after the first body, the second body, the third body. You just smelled it after he went to jail? I don't know about that story, folks. Could she be the mother behind, the evil mother behind the killer's son, and they did it together? I don't know. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just talking.
And I witnessed a body there that was, at that point, pretty severely decomposed.
When you find that it is a human being, there is a drop in your heart and your stomach, because that was someone's mom, dad, brother, sister, family member. And when you find that the death has occurred, that's an awful lot to take.
The victim in the bathroom, we believe, was the most recent victim. Went missing sometime April or May of that year.
A distinctive ankle tattoo and fingerprints allow police to identify the first victim as missing 27-year-old Kayla Escalante. Her body was bound and gagged.
The first body was just in a basement bathroom that anyone could have really walked down to.
I then walked outside and I was brought down to the garage area down at the end of the driveway by police officers. Again, the smell was very strong, even being in the open air. Walked into the garage just a few steps and could see at that point a severely decomposed body. The smell was very strong. There were black flies present.
We believe the victim found in the garage was abducted sometime in April.
The second victim is confirmed as missing 47-year-old, soon-to-be grandmother Ernestine Ryans. Her body was dumped and loosely covered with cardboard.
I knew that we had a very serious situation on our hands. I made some phone calls to members of my staff, called Assistant District Attorney Max Bennett and asked him to respond to the scene.
At that point, it looked like we had two bodies that had just been kind of left.
There's no way the mother lived there. Like, once again, I'm gonna say, I don't know about the case. I haven't read no paperwork. I didn't cover the case, but there's no way this went on. She lived there and wasn't part of it and didn't know about it. That's all I'm saying.
The following day, after detectives had noticed disturbed dirt underneath a wooden shed in the backyard, and a state police cadaver dog had alerted on the area, detectives began digging there, where we unearthed the body of the third victim, bound with internet cords, computer cables, and almost completely decomposed in a skeletal fashion with very little tissue left. Based on our investigation we pieced together, we believe she went missing sometime in September.
Investigators need to use dental records to identify 34-year-old America Leiden.
It certainly presents, in my experience now, as a very unique crime scene and a very unique set of circumstances that, at the time were startling, were scary, were horrifying, and now stand out as some of the more heinous crimes and really egregious, scenery that I've seen in my years in law enforcement.
Women that were in the home while his mother was around or present in the home, they walked out alive. When his mother would leave the house or be gone for long periods of time, that's when we believe the murders occurred.
You see, I didn't watch this, so I was just saying the mother couldn't been living there, but they trying to say she was living there and this shit occurred when she wasn't there and she didn't smell nothing prior to him going to jail. Come on, man. Let's go back.
At the time were startling, were scary, were horrifying, and now stand out as some of the more heinous crimes and really egregious, scenery that I've seen in my years in law enforcement.
Women that were in the home while his mother was around or present in the home, they walked out alive. When his mother would leave the house or be gone for long periods of time, that's when we believe the murders occurred.
We do believe that Mr. Weldon has been living up until the time of his arrest at this address.
This is a largely residential area with, sort of middle-class families who take pride in their homes and who go to work every day. Children lived in that neighborhood. So there was a lot of shock, especially from that area of the city of Springfield, that, this kind of behavior that became national and international news was happening, just yards away from their homes.
Weldon is now charged with the murders of America Leiden, Ernestine Ryans, and Kayla Escalante, along with the previous charges related to the kidnap and attempted murder of the victim found in his car. With Weldon off the streets, Other victims now feel able to report what he's done to them.
So here you have Weldon in police custody, and police work now shows that a series of rapes that had been ongoing in that same city also stopped. Police work then puts 2 and 2 together to look at Weldon perhaps being the suspect for those rapes.
He was incredibly brutal in his rapes. And I think that he didn't really care if they lived or not. I can certainly see that once somebody died in his care, how that would become an additional fun thing for him. And then it would continue.
Even if something was reported to police, prosecuting a case involving a person with serious mental health issues and serious addiction issues who's homeless and transient really presents very difficult circumstances for prosecutors to maintain. These cases are very challenging.
It wasn't until a lot of these women realized that women they knew had been killed in that house, that's what brought them forward. It was doing it for other people and realizing this was a lot more serious, and they had to stand up for these women that no longer had a voice. He's looking for people who are less likely to go to the police. He made several statements to some of them. Go tell someone, no one's going to believe you. And quite frankly, that's the exact mentality of the women that he was seeking out, people who didn't think they'd be believed, who didn't think it was worth coming forward, and would just be happy to move on with their lives after the fact, having escaped.
His objectives with these women, his propensity to rape and commit acts of violence are things that have no place in our society. Those rapes, we believe, became more and more violent, involved strangulation, involved the use of various sort of tools or machinery to carry out these rapes and to carry out the violence that was a part of this experience for Mr. Weldon. Some cases, murder becomes a product of one's desire not to be apprehended. But we believe in Mr. Weldon's case, it was truly a sexual murder in which the murder became a part of his fantasy and carrying out his desires.
Stewart Weldon was a sexual sadist in many respects. So it wasn't just a murder. This isn't somebody who's raping women and then killing them to avoid capture. This is somebody that I think, given the level of torture that he inflicted on his victims, who got sexual satisfaction from that torture, from hurting them, from seeing them cry or beg or plead.
Eight cases of...
Real quick, for me, it's crazy because, like I said, man, I shared a cell with this dude for a period of time. It was a few months at least. Like, that's crazy because, like, I'm telling you, you wouldn't have guessed this. You wouldn't have known this was coming because, like I said, I shared the cell prior to all of this, but you wouldn't have known that this guy would have been this guy.
Rape are added to Weldon's charges, thanks to the testimony of survivors who are granted anonymity.
A rape, by its very definition, is a vile act, one of the most heinous crimes that we know in our criminal justice system. But certainly Stewart Weldon's behaviors as we came to know them were particularly dark and focused, where he brought them to a level of violence where they were strangled, where they were beaten, and so on and so forth in very, very severe ways.
This guy is not just a menace to sex workers. This guy is a loose cannon to everybody in his life. This is somebody who's been known to threaten to shoot up a bar because he's angry, to assault a woman on the street. And yet this is somebody who's engaging in all of these activities in any other neighborhood. This guy would be in jail and then prison for any one of these. And yet he seems to be operating with few consequences, if any.
Weldon pleads not guilty to all charges. As prosecutors prepare for trial, they fear the nature of the crime scene and the accounts of some survivors may allow Weldon to plead insanity.
So at that point, it was my concern.
They allow him to plead insanity. From my history in dealing with him, the boy has some issues. Once again, if you know what I mean when I say the people that walk in a circle around the pod, they get their meds and they sleep. They wake up, they walk around their pod, they get their meds and they sleep. Those be the mental health issue people that you see on your little bids. So yes, he's got problems.
That this is going to...
But I'm not saying he shouldn't be in prison. No, I'm not saying that.
Poorly for us trying to prove that he was able to conform his conduct, the fact that he would leave rotting bodies out like this. There was a description by one victim of him essentially putting candles on the floor in a pentagram. Another one indicated that he had motioned to an area underneath the basement stairs and said that a demon lived there and he threw salt there. Other times he would just maybe ramble about something satanic in a way that the victims couldn't really tell us exactly what he was saying, just that he was rambling on about satanic things.
One of the things that I do wonder about Stewart Weldon is whether he had some kind of brain impairment or brain damage that in some respects affected his impulsivity.
Not trying to defend him, but I want to answer that question for y'all. Yes, he has some brain fucking issues. I know. I shared a cell with him.
That's a problem for us because one of the things we're gonna have to prove in this case is that he was sane and that he appreciated the wrongfulness of his actions and that he had the ability to conduct himself in a lawful manner. When you hear things like that, or the fact that he was obsessed with a ghost detecting website, those are things that you're gonna need to explain.
Stewart Weldon is in custody, pleading not guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder and 49 other charges relating to a total of 11 victims.
Jeez.
Prosecutors are working to prove
11 victims. Serial R. Kellyer. 11 victims and he killed 3. Wow.
he was criminally responsible for his actions, as they fear Weldon's defense may claim Weldon was insane or under the effects of a mental disorder at the time of the offenses. He's due to face trial in April 2020.
We had to show that there was going to be some kind of organization to what's happening here, some kind of pattern rather than just random chaotic violence. I tell this a lot to new prosecutors. The most important witness and the most consistent witness in any murder prosecution is going to be your scene. We had to ask for an extension here because crime scene detectives spent days digging in that yard and then going through that house and being very careful to procure DNA evidence, swabbing everything, looking for fingerprints, things like that.
They were very careful in making sure that they're preserving evidence. This is preserving your crime scene. Are you keeping as many people out of the crime scene as possible? Are you thinking in the future? Is there something that could change my crime scene? Weather, for example.
We had to take a lot of small, disparate pieces of evidence, link them together to build a pattern that we could extrapolate. We found 2 bleach bottles there, which kind of indicated some kind of cleanup had happened. The ground was sticky, also indicating some kind of cleanup had occurred under there at some point.
Excuse me.
Yo, it's me, Jersey.
See, didn't I tell y'all at the beginning of the video, we used to call him Jersey. He just said it. It's me, Jersey. That's what we used to call that dude.
You keeping as many people out of the crime scene as possible. Are you thinking in the future? Is there something that could change my crime scene? Weather, for example.
We had to take a lot of small, disparate pieces of evidence, link them together to build a pattern that we could extrapolate. We found 2 bleach bottles there, which kind of indicated some kind of cleanup had happened. The ground was sticky, also indicating some kind of cleanup had occurred under there at some point.
Yo, it's me, Jersey. I apologize if I ever f***ed anybody over and say I wish I could have did better with my life, you know what I'm saying? But I'm tired of living, man.
The video isn't a confession, but evidence of Weldon trying to cover his actions would help prove he was acting with intent. There were inconsistencies in his story, too.
It became kind of known to me that he might be saying the victims were only bound after they were killed so that they'd be easier to move. And so we had to look at the exact circumstances we found him in at that point. And the first victim, in discussions with the medical examiner, we were able to determine that she was bound in duct tape. And due to some of the lividity and the blanching of the skin, that medical examiner was going to be able to give us testimony saying that blood was still flowing at the time that those bonds were applied to the victim, and that she was alive when that happened. There's a broken hyoid bone in the neck, and we knew that to mean that some force had been applied manually to the neck, most likely with hands. We got very lucky with a DNA hit from our second victim on one of the backs of the post there, which let us know her body had at some point been underneath those basement steps, and then we found her in the garage. That was very helpful because it brought back our theory, essentially, that the bad things were happening to these women in the basement, and then the bodies were brought out, which showed an organized pattern. And that allowed us to start bringing in the stories of the survivors from his basement, and we were able to start applying what happened to them to what happened to the bodies that we found. Essentially, through all these pieces of evidence, it became very clear that Mr. Weldon knew who was a suitable victim for what he wanted to do. He knew where to procure them from and how to procure them without any resistance. There weren't reports coming in of him dragging women into his cars. He knew how to charm them in, and then he knew how far he could go with these women. If there was someone in the house, he knew he had to let them go. If he knew he had the house kind of completely unfettered for a long period of time, that's when we believed these killings were happening.
When you have bodies buried in your basement, one of the only options left is to plead insanity. And the fact that he didn't plead insanity likely means he was evaluated and was told, as his attorneys were told, that he doesn't meet the insanity defense. He wasn't legally insane at the time he committed these crimes.
This was definitely premeditated and well thought out by him.
People evaluated him and said, bad news, you're not insane.
To discover that a human being was capable of really torturing victims systematically in that home, and the deaths that those 3 women experienced, and what Mr. Weldon did in, frankly, a ham-handed attempt to cover up his crimes, is very unique. It's something that I have not seen otherwise, and I hope to never see again.
Please be seated. Court's now in session. No talking, please.
Your Honor, many of these women didn't come forward because they were terrified about what happened to them. Based on who they were, how they lived, what they were going through, they didn't think anyone would believe them or care about what happened to them. The only good thing that comes from this case, Your Honor, is now they know that that's not true. When America, Ernestine, and Kayla were in his house, he knew he had that house to himself for an extended period of time. He knew he would not be interrupted or disturbed, and he would have time to do what he needed. He tailored his lies and the cover-up about this case. Depending on who he was talking to, he would explain the smell in a way that was designed to cause the least amount of alarm to his audience. He tailored these lies about the smell while searching the internet on how to remove the smell of dead animal carcasses, always careful to never search them as dead bodies. The intent...
So it sounds like at some point he was questioned by family members about the smell. And y'all just waited till he went to jail to call the police when y'all could have possibly saved a life. Did you question him about the smell after the first body and then you let two more happen? I'm just asking the questions. That's what I do here. Present you with the facts and give you my opinion on the facts.
For what he did here is all over this case.
Kelly was a daughter, a sister, and a mother. She could light up a room with her smile, fill it with her laughter. Her love for her friends and her family never dwindled, but instead it grew every day. She could love with the power of 1,000 hearts. She never gave up on the things that meant the most to her.
There are no words to describe the pain in my heart. That started the day I found out my mom was one of the defendant's victims. The feelings of hurt, sadness, confusion, loneliness, regret, and most of all anger are just a few of my daily emotions now. I wake up every day hoping that this was all a bad dream and relive the horror when I realize it was real. They say time heals all wounds, but Your Honor, I don't feel like this is a wound that will ever heal. I miss my mom.
For 3 months, I wondered every single day where she was. Is she okay? Having hope we would see her again. The day I gave birth, I still wasn't know where she was at, laying alone in a dirty, dark garage.
My life crumbled and stopped the minute the detectives came to my door. I'll never forget those moments. Every day, I am haunted by memories and images. I will never be whole again. The defendant took away my daughter, my sweet little angel, Kayla Jean. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Stewart Weldon, in consideration of this offense, court orders that you be confined at MCI Cedar Junction for the term of your natural life.
To give voice to people who are downtrodden, to give a sense of respect to people who have really been at the lowest rungs of society for a very long time, to give a sense of purpose and meaning to people who are suffering from addiction and are suffering from mental health issues, to give them worth through this process is really very special work. I want to give credit to our team, and in particular, Assistant District Attorney Max Bennett, who pieced together a case and worked with great compassion and great fortitude to give the murder victims' families and the living victims a sense of dignity, a sense of closure, a sense of justice around the horrible things that happened to them or happened to their loved ones.
There's nothing I could say that would ease the pain of the families of the victims in this case.
Stewart Weldon's victims were at a very desperate point in their lives, and they were all battling addiction and trying to beat it. And it can be easy to forget that these were women who had children often. They were sisters, they were daughters, they had interest They loved their families, and they really were much more than that snapshot of what they were struggling with when they died.
So as you can see, that was the story of a Stewart Weldon, a serial killer in Springfield who lived here by way of New Jersey, by way of Queens, New York, and I happened to share a cell with him prior to him doing all of this, and I would have never thought that would be his future. He was a guy that you didn't pay no mind to. He was a guy that you knew had some type of screws loose. But, like I always say, I present you with the facts, give you my opinion on those facts. And if you like how I do that, please hit that like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, click all, so you can get notifications every time I do one of these videos. If you're a supporter of the channel, much love and respect goes out to you. Salute. And if you're one of them haters, cut this shit. That part.